Okay, so Willie comes over. He wants to have a meeting. He wanted to talk about everything. And he said he just wanted it to be Harry and himself. And he didn't want, wives were not to be included. Let's just, brother to brother, let's talk about what in the world's happening because it's gotten out of control. Harry says, luckily, as it happened, Meg was out of town visiting girlfriends, so it worked out. Well, it's like, does she have to be out of town already, like, occupied? You can't just say, hey, I need to go meet with my brother. We need to talk. Like, why is that so convenient? Whether she was in town or not, you should be able to say, hey, I need to meet with William, and it's just going to be us. But I don't think Harry is allowed to tell her what's going to happen in any circumstance. Well, he says that an hour later, William comes in heated, outraged already. So, of course, the implication here is that nothing could have been accomplished because William was already outraged. He says that it was early in the evening and he offered William a drink, and he tried to have a pleasant conversation. Here I was, just trying to be nice, offered him a drink. I suppose family wouldn't have any of it. But even though Harry asked about William's family, William didn't even have the common decency to ask about his. He just went all in, chips at the center of the table. Meg's difficult, he said. Oh, really? She's rude. She's abrasive. She's alienated half the staff. And he says that, of course, this was just William parroting that media again. The press is just all up in his head, and he can't make any sense of what William is saying. Like, where would William get any of these ideas? I don't know, from being in the family with her? It's like, he doesn't have to rely on the press for some hot take. I mean, he knows the woman. So what, like, that is just such a meager, weak, lame excuse that he got all this stuff from the press. Well, first of all, William doesn't read the press because he's not going to waste his time with a bunch of ratty magazines. He doesn't need to read the press to know that Meg is difficult and rude. He's had multiple conversations with her in which she was difficult and rude. And so for Harry to not be able to connect the dots is, once again, yet another mark against his IQ. Harry says that he told William, I expect better from you. And he says that he was shocked to see that this actually pissed William off. And what Harry couldn't get over was, had William come expecting something different? Did he think that Harry would side with William? And so, there's all this shock and indignation, and Harry can't understand where William's coming from. William can't understand where Harry's coming from. And Harry writes this. I told him to step back, take a breath, really ask himself, wasn't Meg his sister-in-law? Wouldn't this institution be toxic for any newcomer? Worst case scenario, if his sister-in-law was having trouble adjusting to a new office, a new family, a new country, a new culture, couldn't he see his way clear to cutting her some slack? Couldn't you just be there for her? Help her! My voice. But it's like, after a while, I can't cut you any more slack. You can't. I don't care if something is difficult and hard for you. You don't get through life by saying, oh, this is a learning curve for me, so part of the learning curve includes me being allowed to have fits when I feel like it. Oh, this office and family and country and customs are different. That means I can just treat everybody like trash. And, cut me some slack already. It's hard for me here. It's like, it would have been one thing if she had always been charming, and what Harry was saying was, she's messed up a little bit on protocol, she didn't know about this or that, or, we didn't brief her. Like, if there was actual documented incidences in which she'd been trying her best, she'd been reading all of the material that had been given to her, she'd been truly briefed, and then something happened or there was some little misstep, that would be one thing. But the problem is, the things people are angry at her with aren't just the little breaches. I mean, the thing is that those incidences have been tagged on, but it's only because they're wanting to add to a variety of other things that have already happened that are a lot more egregious. So they're not really mad about the fact that she got into the car before Granny. If that had been the only thing, if it had been the only misstep, then people probably would have found it sort of charming and funny that she made a little bit of a, faux pas, but it wouldn't be anything that people would despise her for, but people despised her because she was mean and unkind. So no, they're not going to cut her slack for being mean and unkind. People cut you slack for when you just genuinely don't know something. They're not going to cut you slack because you're throwing hot tea at people or raging around the office or being short with people or cutting people off. No, you don't. There's no circumstance in which any of that would be acceptable behavior, new or not. You're not rude to people. Well, William's not taking any of that. He doesn't need those sorry excuses. But William, according to Harry, had no interest in debate. He'd come to lay down the law. He wanted me to agree that Meg was wrong and then agree to do something about it. Okay, so then Harry immediately goes to Mr. Put Upon, like, what are you saying? Are you saying that you want me to divorce her? No, William's not saying that. It's just, you need to stop letting her jerk you around by the throat and finally stand up to this person and say, hey, you're being really difficult for people to get along with. Like, stand up to her. She's going to behave this way as long as she can get away with it. Harry, speak to her. You're the closest person to her. Tell her this is not acceptable. But of course, Harry's got to go straight into dramatics. And so Harry says, well, like what? Scold her? Fire her? Divorce her? I didn't know. But Willie didn't know either. He wasn't rational. Every time I tried to slow him down, point out the illogic of what he was saying, he got louder. We were soon talking over each other, both of us shouting. And the thing that shocked Harry so especially was that William seemed so aggrieved about all of this. Harry writes that he seemed put upon that I wasn't meekly obeying him, that I was being so impertinent as to deny him or defy him, to refute his knowledge, which came from his trusted aides. It, once again, didn't come from the media or his trusted aides. He's seen it often enough in action that if one of his aides were to come to him and say, sir, X, Y, and Z's just gone down in the office, it isn't a far cry for William to be like, yeah, I know, I'm sure it did, because that's how she acts all the time. It's not like he'd only ever seen this beautiful side to Meghan, and then out of the depths of depravity, somebody drags some trashy story, and then beyond all reasonable understanding, William just bought it hook, line, and sinker. Now, William would have seen this himself before he just believed. All right, but anyway, Harry says that there was a script, and between the two of them, that their lives had always been scripted out. William told Harry what to do, and Harry did it. And that William was shocked at the audacity being displayed, that Harry would not follow the script. He was in the full air mode, and he couldn't fathom why I wasn't dutifully playing the role of the spare. But it's like, if you're translating his shock at you not obeying the role, it's not him being shocked that you won't obey him. It's him being shocked that you can't see that you've married somebody who is a completely manipulative and hateful and spiteful individual, who gets off on telling people what to do, who finds joy in overpowering what she considers to be weaker people. Like, his shock didn't come from the fact that you weren't following the script. It came from the fact that you couldn't see the monster you had married. Okay, so Harry says that he was just sitting there on the sofa cowering, and then William was over the top of him, and that it was just this, horrible dynamic of William lording over all the power of the centuries over him. And that Willie, according to Harry, just wouldn't hear him out. He kept, listen to me, Willie, just wait, don't hit me, please. No, please. It's like an absolutely ridiculous scene is being painted for us. He wouldn't listen. He simply would not listen. He says that William called him names, all kinds of names. He said that Harry refused to take responsibility for what was happening. Well, he is refusing to take responsibility for what's happening. William said that I didn't care about my office and the people who worked for me. You don't care about your office and the people who are working for you. You just finished telling us that everybody was just in complete and total meltdown mode. People were lying across their desks, weeping, taking off work because of depression, that people weren't coming into the office on time because it was such a hostile and horrible place to work. But it didn't used to be that way until Megan came. She was the addition to the office. And now suddenly, without, like, you cannot put two and two together. Like, of course William's frustrated beyond belief. You're being boneheaded and stupid. Willie, give me one example. What are you talking about? Don't hit me. Don't hit me. But just please tell me what you're talking about. But William cut him off. And William said that he was trying to help Harry. Like, just stop with the cringing. I'm trying to help you see what you've gotten yourself into. Are you serious? Help me? Sorry, is that what you call help? Standing over me, scaring the bejesus out of me. For some reason, that really set him off. He stepped towards me, swearing. Oh gosh, can you even see William stepping towards anyone swearing? To that point, I'd been feeling like, well, actually, I think I can. He has a commanding presence. But not illogically swearing at somebody. To that point, I'd been feeling uncomfortable. But now I felt a bit scared. I stood, brushed past him, went out into the kitchen to the sink. He was right on my heels, berating me, shouting. Really? Like, who among, well, I guess Harry's had quite a while of learning to retreat from danger whenever he senses it, because he doesn't have the backbone to stand up. The thing is that he knows that what William is saying is true, but he can't agree with it, because if he agrees with it, then he's going to have to make some life changes. So all he can do is deny, 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 and act like William is the one with the problem. A little trick that he picked up from his wife. So he says he was feeling terrified, and to get away from William, he went to the kitchen to the sink. But here comes William, roaring up after him, shouting, cursing, berating him. He says he poured a glass of water for himself, and he wants to add that he also poured one for William. So, you know, he's just full of life and love. And he handed it to William. But I don't even think he took a sip. How dare him? Willie, I can't speak to you when you're like this. You're a madman. William set down the water, called me another name, and came at me. Well, what are these names, though? Because, you know, Harry, throughout this entire book, has gone on ridiculous tirades against other people, calling them all manner of names. When it comes to the press, he spares no one's feelings. In fact, we'll see another incident in a little bit. So I just find it absolutely ridiculous that he wants us to believe that William was calling him names, and yet he's just gonna, he's too kind and decent to tell you what those names were. He won't let those names fall from his lips. You don't have any problem smearing other people, so why won't you just tell us what William said? If William is treating you unkindly, and anybody who's ever treated you unkindly before has gotten like the worst treatment from you, why are you suddenly now drying up? Oh, could it be because William didn't actually say anything? Okay, so anyway, listen to this. He set down the water, called me another name, then came at me. It all happened so fast, so very fast. How dramatic. So fast, so very fast. He grabbed me by the collar, ripped my necklace. He knocked me to the floor. I landed on the dog's bowl, which cracked under my back, the pieces cutting into me. I lay there for a moment, dazed, and then got up to my feet and told him, "Get out! Get out!" Come on, hit me. You'll feel better if you hit me. Do what? Come on. We always used to fight. You'll feel better if you hit me. No. You'll only feel better if I hit you. Please. Just leave. He left the kitchen, but he didn't leave Not Caught. He was in the sitting room. I could tell. I stayed in the kitchen. 2 minutes passed. 2 long minutes. He came back looking regretful and apologized. He walked to the front door. This time I followed. Before leaving, he turned and called back. You don't need to tell Meg about this. You mean that you attacked me? I didn't attack you, Harold. Fine. I won't tell her. Good, thank you. He left. I looked at the phone. And a promise is a promise, I told myself. So I wouldn't call my wife, much as I wanted to. But I needed to talk to someone. So I rang my therapist. Thank God she answered. He says he apologized for the intrusion and told her that he didn't know who else to call. And he told her he'd had a fight with Willie. And William had knocked him to the floor. I looked down and told her that my shirt was ripped. And my necklace was broken. We'd had a million physical fights in our lives. As boys, we'd done nothing but fight. But this felt different somehow. Well, yeah, it is different. Because you made this one up. The therapist told me to take deep breaths. She asked me to describe the scene several times. Each time I did, it seemed more like a bad dream. But he said it made him a bit calmer. And then he says, I'm proud of myself. Proud, Harry? Why's that? Exactly, the question we're all asking. I didn't hit him back. Probably because you know he could have taken you down. I stayed true to my word. No, I didn't tell Meg. You're just telling the world now. You didn't tell Meg, but, one more thing for the book. But not long after she returned from her trip, she saw me coming out of the shower and gasped, Haz, what are those scrapes and bruises on your back? I couldn't lie to her. She wasn't that surprised. And she wasn't at all angry. She was just terribly sad. How noble and how unrealistic. Do any of us believe that Meghan Markle, if she found scratches all down her husband's back from this ye old dog bowl incident, she wouldn't have immediately been on the phone with somebody, calling somebody, texting somebody, outraged, getting on the phone with her girlfriends? You won't believe what he's done now. Listen to what his older brother did this time. I mean, she wouldn't have just sadly turned from the room. The burden of the royal family's twisted and broken familial relationships heaped on her back. She staggered from the room, unable to walk under the weight of hundreds of years of dysfunction. Please. She would have been howling, and she would have been all up in somebody's business if she thought that her husband had been abused at the hands. Finally, here was some physical, like a physical marking that something, that all was not right. She would have taken pictures. She would have made sure that somebody knew something, which is how I know this whole thing didn't happen. I mean, apart from the fact that none of it rings true. She's always pulling out her phone for one thing and another. You're going to tell me she wouldn't have pulled out her phone immediately to document the scars and the bruises on her husband's back? If they had really been marks on him, we would have seen it in the Netflix documentary. But like so much of that fabricated nonsense, there's no actual documentation for anything that they say happened.